It was a record-breaking weekend for the San Diego State Aztecs as they broke the all-time scoring record in the program football league with 74.46 points. They still have Garrett Wilson to play tonight, so they could certainly add on. They're not looking to only break the record, they are looking to shatter it into a million pieces. Stay tuned, everybody. It's the Scoreboard Show. Be back in just a minute. We've got a lot to talk about tonight, including this big game by San Diego State. But there's a lot of other games that went down this weekend, and for all intents and purposes, pretty much we know the final scores on most of these games. I think there's maybe one game that could be in question tonight. That could be Texas, Colorado, but we'll look more into it, go over the scores a little bit, the implications, go over the future. Won't be a very long show tonight, but we're going to talk over a few things and just kind of wrap the week up. I realize that Monday Night Football is going on right now, but I think, again, we have a good idea what's going to happen with the standings and what we have to look forward to. You might remember that I said that it was not very likely that we would have more than 7 teams with 7 wins or better, but I might have to take that back. A look at the games this week shows us that there are quite a few teams that are going to have winning records at the end of week 9. Let's just take a quick look here. We've got California playing Alabama right now, and California with the lead, and they are expected to win. If that happens, they're going to be 5-4. Alabama would drop to 6-3. Moving along to Texas versus Colorado. Currently, Texas holds the lead, and they are predicted to win this game. If Texas wins this one, they go to 4-5. Colorado drops to 5-4. So there's another winning team, Colorado. Obviously, Georgia is going to beat Oregon, so Georgia goes to 5-4. Tulane will lose to Maryland. Maryland goes to 7-2. Michigan is well in front of Fresno State right now, so it looks like Michigan is going to go 5-4 for sure. And New Mexico looking to defeat Penn State. They are leading right now 43-31. However, even a loss puts Penn State at 5-4. So you have Penn State, New Mexico, Michigan, Maryland, Georgia, Colorado, California, Alabama, and San Diego State, all with winning records. And that's 9 teams. So if we have more than 7 teams with winning records, well, we only can have 7 teams challenging for the national championship, and that means 2 teams will be left out. And that is why it's very important to defeat your main rivals. You have to beat the teams that are playing well, because it's going to boil down to head-to-head matchups if there are any tiebreakers. After that, it goes to points. So over the next 4 weeks, we're going to sort a few things out, I would hope, and maybe some teams will just help us figure this out by beating one another, and maybe somebody starts to struggle and just bows out of the race, perhaps. And we'll look into that as well. So California is going to defeat Alabama and go to 5 wins and 4 losses. Alabama will drop to 6-3. Huge win for California as they are hanging in there in their bid to get to the National Championship Series. A look at the schedule ahead for California shows that they have New Mexico next week. That's a tall order. Followed by Michigan, which is a championship contender. Penn State, yet another championship contender. And then Texas. Now, Texas may be out of the running right now, but they are definitely a tough team. It looks like California is going to have their work cut out for them to get to this championship series. But mind you, they only have to win 2 of these games. A look back on the schedule for California shows that they have wins over Georgia and Tulane. The Georgia win's going to be big. They beat Oregon, Fresno State, and Alabama. The Alabama game, of course, is a big one. The victories often came against teams that are not in the championship picture, teams like Tulane, Oregon, and Fresno State. And that will not work in the favor of Cal. For the Golden Bears to give themselves a realistic shot at the championship round, I think they have to win possibly 3 of these games, not just 2. Obviously, this week, a big win against New Mexico would go a long way for Cal. They could also use wins against Texas and Penn State, 2 teams that they can beat. I think Cal does have what it takes to win 3 of these games, and I see them as a front runner for the championship bracket of the teams that are on the bubble. It looks like Colorado is going to suffer a tough loss to Texas this week. It was a tight game, but it doesn't look like they have enough to get over. The schedule ahead for the Buffaloes has Alabama, Maryland, Fresno State, and Michigan. So it looks like Colorado has a couple of more victories up their sleeve. Alabama and Fresno State. Michigan will be a tough game, as will Maryland. A look at the past schedule shows that they have victories against Tulane, Penn State, Oregon, Cal, and Ohio State. Ohio State, Oregon, and Tulane are all non-championship qualifiers right now. Let's look at the losses. San Diego State, New Mexico, Georgia, Texas. 3 of those losses come against teams that are in the championship bracket right now, have winning records. And that's the kind of thing we're talking about here. They're going to lose these tiebreakers. I think it's fairly obvious that the games against Michigan and Alabama are going to be extremely important for Colorado if they want to make the championship bracket. Losses in those games could end up leading to tiebreak situations because those 2 teams also could very likely end up with 7 wins on the season, like Colorado. Georgia, of course, got the easy win over Oregon this week, and the schedule ahead for Georgia has Texas, Penn State, Alabama, and Tulane. The big games now, as we can see, the theme here is that you have to beat teams that are going to be possibly part of a tiebreaker situation. So Alabama is an important game. Penn State is an extremely important game. And of course, it would be nice to take care of business against teams like Texas and Tulane. Now, if Georgia can do that, if they can take advantage of teams like Texas and Tulane and then win at least one of those games against Alabama or Penn State, I see Georgia getting into the championship bracket. Looking back on the schedule previously, they have a big win against Maryland, but actually that's not, I mean, it's a nice win, but it's not really going to add up to much in terms of tiebreakers because Maryland's not likely to end the season with just 7 victories. The Colorado win is big, and the Michigan win is big. Georgia really has some advantages here in the tiebreaker situation. Michigan is a team that was in bad need of a win this week if they wanted to solidify their chances at making the championship bracket, and they did so, beating up on Fresno State. So it looks like Michigan goes to 5-4. Coming up for the Wolverines is Maryland next week, then California, San Diego State, and Colorado. These are all championship caliber teams. Maryland's going to be a tall order next week. California's shown themselves to be tough. San Diego State obviously is a tough team. And Colorado, even though they lost this week, also a very good team. Looking back on the schedule for Michigan, they have 3 wins over the last 3 weeks against non-championship qualifiers here, Tulane, Texas, and Fresno State. They lost to New Mexico, not a big deal there, but they did lose to Alabama and Georgia. They did beat Penn State, an important win, but quite honestly, when you look at that schedule, I think you understand the theme by now. It's kind of looking tough for Michigan to make the championship bracket if they're going to have to depend on a tiebreaker to get in. I think this week coming up against Maryland would be huge just because they need the W. But more importantly, they really have to win those games against Cal and Colorado. And this brings us to the Penn State versus New Mexico matchup. They lose this one 43-31 so far. The game's not over yet, but it looks like it's going to end up in New Mexico's favor. Penn State only has tight end Jeremy Ruckert on the field, and he's not likely to make up an 8-point deficit, or more like a 10-point deficit in this game. So Penn State finds themselves in a tight spot. However, they will have an opportunity to earn their way into the championship bracket because they're playing teams that are part of the championship picture. They have tiebreak opportunities against Georgia, California, and Alabama. Ohio State is a non-championship qualifier currently, unless they go get on fire and start winning some games. But these games against Georgia, California, Alabama, huge games. If Penn State can find a way to win all three of them, there's no doubt about it. They're going to be in the championship bracket. With 5 wins coming into this week, 2 wins, and preferably against Georgia, California, Alabama, would go a long way. I think they need to start by beating Ohio State and then taking 2 of those 3 games to ensure that they get into the championship bracket. But if they lose to Ohio State, they may need to sweep Georgia, California, and Alabama. And that's a tall order for any team. So there you have it for the scoreboard show for week 9. Just a quick little look at next week's games. I'm not going to review them or anything. Let's just take a look real fast. San Diego State against Tulane. Tulane coming in with an 0-8 record after San Diego State's huge week. This week, I think they've thrown down the gauntlet, and they have shown New Mexico that there's not just one title contender in this league. San Diego State is for real, and they've shown that they can beat absolutely everybody. Literally everybody. Penn State takes on Ohio State. Penn State, of course, could use a huge win here. It's not going to be a tiebreaker game, but a win just the same would do Penn State very good. Of course, Ohio State, with their back to the wall, they could win the rest of their games and still get in. So, absolutely they must win this game. New Mexico taking on California. And New Mexico, of course, a tough opponent for anyone. Cal is trying to solidify their chances at getting to the championship bracket. Huge game for them, and a tough one indeed. Oregon versus Fresno State. This is an inconsequential game. Doesn't matter. I think I want to do a video on Oregon, though, and talk a little bit about their chances down the line. They are redshirting Justin Herbert this year, and I think that Oregon has a bright future if they play their cards right. Georgia taking on Texas. Texas, of course, like Ohio State, with their back to the wall. They need a win here badly. They're getting closer to the end, but they still have a couple of losses before they're out of the picture. So even Texas still has a shot like Ohio State does. But these teams would have to win all of their games. Of course, Georgia would just love to win this game and basically help themselves get into that championship bracket. Colorado versus Alabama, 2 teams that are trying to get into the championship bracket. So a huge game, of course, here. And then Michigan, Maryland. Yet again, Maryland, of course, is going to get a win this week. They're pretty much going to be in there. But, hey, if they suddenly got cold and lost all their games, Maryland might be looking at having to deal with tiebreaker scenarios as well. So another huge game coming down between these 2 teams, Michigan and Maryland. Well, that'll do it for the show. Looks like the Chargers are leading the Jets at halftime 17-3, but if I know the Chargers, they'll find a way to lose this game by a field goal at the very end, or maybe they'll miss a field goal. At any rate, if there's any big injury news or anything else that comes up, maybe I'll make a quick hit video, one of those quick ones, 5 minutes or less. But other than that, good luck to everybody in their games, and keep making those free agent pickups because you never know who can help you late in the season. I've been able to pick up a few guys for the Aztecs that have really helped our defensive line. We'll talk a little bit about Oregon as well, and we're going to do a lot of things as the season goes on. We got 4 weeks left, and it's shaping up to be a good one. All right, guys, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.